In this video, I'm going to demonstrate a few bugs I found in Minecraft that have to do with the interaction between pistons and redstone. This first part of the video, I'm going to just show a few of the bugs, and the second part of the video, I'm going to show how to use one of the bugs to design an optimized Insta-Wire redstone repeater. And at the end of the second part, I'll show one additional bug that has to do with the interaction between pistons and redstone. Alright, to start out, I want to show what is called the block update detector bug. I think it's a bug anyways. And how it works is a piston can be powered by a block that is diagonally above it, but since that block isn't adjacent, its powering doesn't actually cause the piston to update. And so the piston is still available for a forced update when, for example, a block is placed next to the piston. Cutting the power causes the same thing. This piston is now completely unpowered, and yet it still remains extended. And the reason it's extended is because even though the power has been cut, the piston doesn't know to update its state until something tells it to, such as a block next to it being removed. This is a well-known bug already, and I won't be demonstrating this further, but many of the bugs I will be demonstrating are similar to this, so I'm going to start with this as the base. So the first bug I want to show has to do with a piece of redstone being placed 2 blocks away from a piston horizontally, and then another piece of redstone being placed next to that piece of redstone. When that happens, somehow this piece of redstone updates, forcing an update on this piston. The same works for removing the piece of redstone, and it also works for redstone in front of the piston, and it even works for redstone that's 2 blocks horizontally from the piston head. And finally, it also works if the piece of redstone is 2 blocks away diagonally. And again, two blocks diagonally from the piston head also works. Alright, so that was horizontally. If it's 2 blocks away, 1 down, and then over 1 horizontally, just placing the piece of redstone causes an update in the piston. So this is different from that case where placing the redstone didn't cause an update. But we can still cause an update in the piston by placing a piece of redstone next to the first piece of redstone, in the same way as with the horizontal case. This also works in front of the piston, and in front of the piston head, and diagonally from the piston head. So here, that doesn't work because it's 3 blocks away. But if I place this and remove it, and then remove this, it also works. Okay. Similarly, for 1 block above and then 1 block over, still 2 blocks away, placing redstone activates the piston. So does removing the redstone. And even placing it on top of the block in front and on top of the block in front of the piston head also works. Placing redstone repeaters works in a similar fashion. So just placing it will cause an update this time, but removing it doesn't. The same works for next to the 2 blocks away from the piston head. So if I extend it again, if I remove the repeater, the piston head doesn't update. And also it works in front here. And again, for if I do this and then place this and remove it, removing the redstone repeater again doesn't cause an update. One thing I forgot to show earlier is that the update with the redstone, this, even though it looks like it's just a graphical update, that might be activating the piston, it actually isn't. So if I cause a graphical update by placing a redstone repeater next to the wire reorients graphically and also physically, but it doesn't cause an update in the piston. Even if I place another repeater here, another graphical update, no update there. It's only redstone that will cause the piston to activate in that fashion. Placing the repeater again causes an update when it's 2 blocks away but down 1. Same with the extended piston, but removing the repeater again doesn't cause the same issue. So if I do that and then remove this one, again no update. Oh, but removing the repeater, of course, adjacent does cause an update, because removing any block adjacent to the piston causes an update in it. Now, doing this will cause an update, so will this, and so will this. Oops. And also this. Alright, so the placement of objects to activate machinery doesn't seem very useful for me, so I'm going to move on now to powering a redstone in order to power non-adjacent piston. So this will cause an update in the piston when this piece of redstone powers. Also, when it turns off, it will cause an update. The same thing can be done in front here. So 2 blocks away from the piston base will cause an update, and also 2 blocks away from the piston arm, changing the power of the redstone will cause an update. One thing I wanted to show with this is that this doesn't always work ideally. So in this case, what we have is this piece of redstone updating the piston when it powers, and also the redstone updating the block there. They update at the same time, which seems to make sense that it should cause the piston to extend because you have an update and a powering effect at the same time. But because of how Minecraft works, simultaneous things don't always happen exactly simultaneously. And so placing this seemingly extraneous piece of redstone here actually causes the mechanism to break down. What I think is happening here is the issue that Sepling originally identified as being a problem due to Minecraft using Java hash sets to actually cause things that should happen simultaneously to happen in a random order or pseudo-random order depending on where they are placed in the map. Because of this, we get something like this, where without this piece of redstone here, you have this block powering and then the update happening on the piston, allowing it to extend, whereas with the block here, or this extra piece of redstone here, you get the update happening and then the powering occurring. And since the piston's already updated before the power occurred, it doesn't know to extend in this configuration versus this one. Same thing here. If I place that redstone, it'll update, but if I power it, it'll also update. Same thing can be done in front, like this. So if I get it extended and then turn the power off, this piece of redstone powering will update the piston head from 2 blocks away. I can't show what happens with a powered piece of redstone on top of a conducting block because that'll directly power the piston, but I can at least show this, which isn't really a bug, but most people don't know what happens. So if you place a piece of redstone on top of a conducting block in front of a piston, it will cause the piston to lose that block just because it'll be powered instantaneously, and then as soon as the piston pushes it, it'll lose that power, and so the piston will retract as soon as possible, and it's too fast for the block to stay stuck. Alright, The last bug I want to show over here is the same thing for repeaters. Repeaters updating will also cause pistons to extend. Oops. In the same way. Try that again. Alright. And we can do the same thing for repeaters here. So we get extension. We can also get extension in front. And 2 blocks away from the piston arm, we can also cause contraction. Here as well, we get the same phenomenon. That repeater can cause it to be powered, and this repeater can cause it to shut again. Finally, blocks that are above and 1 over. So this one turning off can cause the piston to extend. This one turning on can cause the piston to retract. And again, we have, if we remove this, when the repeater is on top of the block, that was in here, powering the piston and then powering that moves the repeater, and etc. Alright, so those bugs together need to be taken into consideration whenever you are designing something that uses pistons and redstone in the same area. Turns out because of these bugs, there's actually a fairly large space around a piston that you need to make sure is operating exactly in such a fashion that it won't interrupt or interfere with the piston. And I'll demonstrate one such issue here. So let's say you had a piston that you wanted to operate down there, and then a signal that you wanted to transmit across that piston up here. If you use just normal redstone here, what you get is this block being powered by that redstone, and then once this piston opens, as long as that signal is on, even though it's supposed to be independent, this piston will be locked open. So I could show that by opening the piston, and then once it's open, if I power this block, this piston will not be able to shut. But then as soon as the signal up here, the power to the block gets cut, the piston will instantly retract. And that's because the piston arm is being directly powered by this block. Then you'll say, okay, I can then transmit the signal with redstone repeaters. That also doesn't work because this repeater will be 2 squares away from the piston arm when it's extended. Because of that, you actually get that this repeater turning on or off will update the piston. And that problem can cause stuff like this, where you have the repeater turning on and that shuts the piston off. One final thing I want to show with this setup is that the powering of the block, or of the piston, actually only occurs with any block that is next to the block that is directly above the piston. It's not just any block that's diagonally above the piston. So to demonstrate that, let me turn this off. I'll extend the piston, and then with this block turned on, we should expect that with its power cut, the piston will stay out when it's updated. But that in fact doesn't happen. And that's because the piston arm, when it's here, even though this block is diagonally above the piston in that way, it doesn't actually power the piston. Only blocks that are next to the block directly above the piston can power it. And that happens to include the block that is above the block that's above the piston. And I've built this to demonstrate that effect. So this is kind of the extreme example of what I'm trying to show off with all these bugs. And that is a piston that has nothing adjacent to it can be turned on and off. What I have here is a lever that just powers this redstone down here, with this piece of redstone being 2 blocks below the piston. This lever only powers the redstone going up to the top. Oops. And all that does is power the block that's 2 blocks above the piston. So if I power that block and then update the redstone below the piston, it extends. Then if I depower that block and update the redstone below, the piston will retract again. So you have a piston that can be controlled even though nothing is adjacent to it, or even nothing is at any of the 26 blocks next to it. Actually, this can be made even simpler. I just built that to demonstrate it more clearly. But you really only need the block above and the block below. So I can power, activate, depower, and deactivate, just with the 2 pieces. Alright, the final bug I want to demonstrate in this video has to do with a line of redstone traveling directly underneath a piston, so it's only 1 block. The next block down is where the redstone is traveling. And the bug occurs when that redstone line turns on and updates the piston to extend. And what the bug is that the signal turning on will fail to update pistons that are further along the line of the redstone. Alright, so to demonstrate that, I've built this machine. All it is a block that's up here diagonally from the piston. That means that when this block is powered, the piston will be powered, and then once this line updates, the piston will update and extend, pushing this block over this torch, which will then power this line, and then power this block on the other side. And then this, again, is the same construction as the first side. So demonstrating this, if we turn on the power to this block, it turns on the power to the piston, then we update the piston, so the piston extends. Now if we remove the power here, this piston has no power to it, while this piston does have power through this block. So we expect me turning this line off will cause an update in both the near piston and the far piston, closing the near piston and extending the far piston. And this is what we get. Now we have the opposite situation, where that block is not powered and this one is, meaning that that piston has no power and this piston does have power. So turning this line on, we would expect to update both pistons to switch their states. But we see that only the near piston extends. Now that's, again, because this turned on and this is extending at the same time. Just to show that this isn't a direction-based event, I'll reset and do it from the other side. So turn on the power, get the first piston extended, switch them both. Oh, whoops, I left that on. Let me reset that real quick. Alright, so turn this on, switch the first piston, and then switch them both, and then we get a jam again. Now there is a way to set this up so it works from one side, and I want to show that real quick just to make it completely clear what this bug is. So if I turn this on to start with, and then power this block, oops, I didn't reset it. Alright, so if I turn this on to start with, and then power this block, and then start the activation, we will get the function to be as we predict from the normal physics, where updating the pistons will cause them to switch, depending on whether they're powered or not. And the reason this works, whereas the other way didn't, is because this is depowering this line as this piston is extending. Now this seems like, oh, it works fine, but then if I go and try to use the other side of the machine, we again get the jam. So, in order to fix this machine so it works from both sides as I would like it to, we can just use the bug I already identified over there and not run the redstone directly under the first piston. So now the pistons are only activated by redstone that is 2 squares away, or 2 blocks away from each piston. And what this does is allows us to turn it on and switch both pistons faithfully. Again, this works because the redstone doesn't pass directly underneath any piston, and therefore it doesn't, when it turns on, cause any piston to simultaneously and directly above it extend. Alright, so the last bug I want to show is fairly complicated, and I can't think of a simple way to reproduce it, so I'm going to put that in a separate video. Thank you for your time.